might be wondering why I'm wearing this poorly manufactured flea market Rey Mysterio mask. Well, good question. I don't know why. Oh yeah, right. We are reviewing another wrestling game, but it's not going to be another WWE title. And no, it's not a WCW game. It's Mexico's own AAA promotion. That's right, folks. In 2010, AAA would receive their very own video game, developed by Immersion Software and Graphics. Ever heard of them? Chances are, if you're not a fan of the game I'm about to review, then probably not. They developed a handful of budget titles for the PS2, PS3, and 360, amongst other platforms, before tackling Lucha Libre AAA Héroes del Ring, which would be their last title. This one would drop on October 12th, 2010 for the PS3, Xbox 360, and from what I understand, there was a Wii version in production, but it ended up getting canceled. And elsewhere, I've heard the Wii version actually did get released, but only in Mexico. I have no idea. But what I do know is today we're going to be looking at the Xbox 360 version, which did in fact release. I know this because I'm holding it. So let's pop this one into the old red ring machine and see how it performs. We're first greeted by La Parka dancing in the darkness, followed by some clips from AAA television set to some very fitting Hispanic music. And I don't think I've ever seen a slam onto the underside of a table like this before. It's pretty cool. Maybe I need to start watching some AAA. With that being said, I've probably made it quite apparent that I don't know a whole lot about the promotion. I know in the 90s they would have working relationships with both WCW and the WWF at different times, and obviously some pretty big names passed through the promotion, but that's about the end of my knowledge here. Because of that, I don't recognize a lot of the talent featured here, which comes in at just over 40 wrestlers. But as a WCW fan, it is nice to see some of that promotion's alumni make appearances, such as Conan, La Parka, Vampiro, Psychosis, and Silver King. The last time we saw some of these guys in a video game was way back in the late 90s. I was especially surprised to see former WWE superstar Kenzo Suzuki here, who I kind of forgot existed altogether. Sorry, Kenzo. Quite a bit of this roster is locked the first time you boot this one up, and with no cheats available here, you'll be forced to play through the story mode before you'll get to experience all the wrestlers this game has to offer. Another cool little extra are the biographies for each wrestler, which especially comes in handy for those of us that are still getting to know who some of these wrestlers are. This is another wrestling title like WWF No Mercy and TNA Impact that only features half entrances, meaning you'll see your wrestler hit the stage area, perform some taunts, and hear a brief introduction for him before it ends suddenly. Though this is a bit of a disappointment for me, I do have to say they look really good with attention to lighting, pyro, and smooth animation transitions. When the bell rings, first-timers might have a few hurdles on their way to victory. While this game features a conventional grapple system that at this point had become commonplace within the genre, its button layout is where the learning curve lies. While the face buttons are reserved for strikes and other functions, such as picking up weapons, climbing the turnbuckle, and exiting the ring, the grapple or tie-up command is performed by tapping the triggers, with right being a weak grapple and left reserved for strong grapples. Within a grapple, the face buttons are used to pull off different moves, while the left bumper is used to Irish whip your opponent. This is also the button used to make your wrestler run when not tied up with an opponent. Popularity plays a huge role in each match and will need to be earned by filling this meter up here. This is accomplished by successfully performing moves on your opponent, as well as taunting, which is done by pressing the directional pad. As popularity is gained, your moveset will expand, allowing you to perform more powerful moves and eventually finishers. Once that meter is filled, simply tap both triggers to initiate your special state, at which point a grapple from either trigger will automatically perform your wrestler's finisher. Other moves like submissions, picking up or pinning your opponent are easy one-button commands and feel organic, but I found it very hard to train my brain to constantly use the triggers for tie-ups. It just didn't feel natural and hindered my experience with the game, unfortunately. Another important aspect of a wrestling title is the blocking and countering system, which is done here by pressing the right bumper. Blocking helps with incoming strikes, while countering needs to be timed just right in order to reverse an enemy's strike or grapple move. In this case, that timing is rather early. I found myself having to try to predict my enemy's moves to successfully land a counter. It was definitely a problem for me, but to be fair, I personally have pretty slow reaction time, so counter systems are never really my forte. Breaking away from submission holds consists of this tug-of-war type of meter, where the player must rapidly press a specific button in order to gain the advantage. It's important to pay close attention, however, as this button will change every few seconds. The pinning system is similar, but instead of the back and forth process, we see a one-way meter that simply becomes more difficult as the match progresses and your player takes on damage. The gameplay is a mix of arcade and simulation, with some moves sending your opponents flying back 10 feet and out of the ring. Player movement, however, is a bit on the slow side, and while we do see lots of diving and high-flying moves, the slower pace does take a bit away from the fact that this is a game based on the luchador style of wrestling, which is typically very fast-paced and action-packed. Weapons are here, and just like in games such as WWF Warzone and even TNA Impact, they're just lying around the ring area, which is convenient. And speaking of Impact, if you've seen my review on that game, or if you've played it yourself, you'll know that there's only one weapon in the entire game, a steel chair. Well, we get more than that here, because in addition to that chair, we see fluorescent lighting tubes. That's right, folks, 2 weapons. God, I feel spoiled. One nice touch here is that in addition to basic weapon attacks, we see weapon grapples as well, which was popularized in the SmackDown series of games. The game's visuals look very good with highly detailed character models, unique rings, the inclusion of referees, and while the animations are actually executed exceptionally, there are a few issues elsewhere, unfortunately. While I didn't encounter many bugs during my time playing this one, the ones I did come across were quite interesting, like players warping around the ring. I also noted quite a few missed inputs here, which was very frustrating on top of the unique control layout I was still trying to get a grasp on. The difficulty is quite unbalanced, with easy matches allowing for a finisher and the win within 60 seconds of starting a match, and even the same on the opposite side if the difficulty set too high, with the AI-controlled opponents having the ability to annihilate players in record timing. But if you find that sweet spot where you can have a lengthy, competitive match, it'll make for a good time. The arena selection here is plentiful and very diverse, from larger new age venues to outdoor setups and even stuff like gyms and warehouses. Unfortunately, just like the roster, many of these selections are locked at the start of the game. It was very odd for me to see the Comex logo on the rings here. This is a residential and commercial coatings company based out of Mexico that I actually worked for from 2007 to 2014, and it's just weird for me to see this logo in a video game. Having said that, I know that this logo, as well as the ESPN logos, were actually used in the promotion during the time, so it's nice to see the attention to detail here. We get commentary here, and even see the option for English and Spanish selections, with Conan and Jack Melendez providing the English version. It's a bit on the repetitive side, but I really enjoy Conan's personal jabs as the heel commentator.
There are a lot of angry fans. They are out of food at the snack bar. Moody Jack got there before them.
We also hear some heckling from the crowds, and while that's only presented in Spanish, a language I don't speak, I still find them a vital portion that makes up the game's atmosphere. And while the music is very limited and loops quite frequently, I really enjoy what they did include here. Match types are limited here to say the least. We see stuff like 1-on-2, 2-on-2, triple threat, and fatal facing of 4. You can adjust some match options to make no countouts and DQ and whatnot, but that's really it. There's no ladders, cages, backstage areas, or anything of the sort. There is this King of Kings mode. Not that King of Kings. This is merely a tournament mode and doesn't really change much from the other match types. They did include some creation modes here like the banner editor, which allows the player to create their own fan signs. And of course everybody's favorite, the Create a Wrestler mode, appearing here as Luchador Editor. Options here are pretty generous for the most part, with heavy emphasis on masks, allowing the player to choose from many different bases, colors, and accessories. Other attire selections like tattoos and accessories are here as well, in addition to customizable movesets, as well as entrance selection. A few drawbacks here include the fact that there are only 4 created wrestler slots, and only one created wrestler can participate in a match at a time. Once you've created a player, you can take to the game's story mode. Here is where you learn the differences between the Technicos, those who fight for honor and do the right thing, and the Rudos, the rebellious rule breakers. You'll choose between one of the 2 options, with each featuring its own unique storyline, complete with cutscenes unwrapping the story's events, and real footage of AAA wrestlers and match clips explaining specifics related to special match types. Now I say that lightly because I mentioned there are no unique match types here, with the exception of the few stipulations you'll come across in this mode, like the hair versus mask match, which is essentially a standard one-on-one bout with a special cutscene tacked onto the end of it. So again, I'm not sure that even counts as a special match type. Nevertheless, there are things like this that keep the mode entertaining as you progress. And speaking of progression, as you move along the rather short mode, you'll unlock all of those wrestlers and arenas that I previously mentioned. The difficulty will definitely begin to increase as well, with handicap matches becoming more frequent, and handicap matches suck. It's hard to fight off 2 enemies without a tag format, and that's not the worst of it. They'll actually throw you into the ring with 3 opponents occasionally, which inadvertently becomes entertaining as the AI will actually start grappling and striking each other on accident. I was able to get some cheap wins by luring enemies outside of the ring and leaving them lay while I climb back in and the ref counts them out. But some of these matches had countouts disabled, so I was pretty much screwed. The stories aren't super engaging, but they're entertaining enough, and combined with the shorter duration, you should keep pretty entertained from beginning to end. This is one of those games that I missed when it was released, but where other games I simply didn't play for one reason or another, this one I just flat out didn't know existed. It's a shame too, because in 2010 it would have been nice to have a non-WWE wrestling title to play. If you're a fan of AAA, then of course this is probably right up your alley, despite its imperfections. But the more casual wrestling fan might only get some slight enjoyment out of this one. I'm glad I picked this one up, but I can't say I would play it on a regular basis. What about you guys? Did you know about this one? Have you played it? If so, what do you think? As always, I'd like to hear from you guys in the comments section. And until the next video, I thank you for watching, and I hope to see you back here soon. Dude, I bought this thing like 10 years ago at a flea market. Seriously, I've never used it. It's been sitting on the shelf, so I guess I finally got my money's worth.